Heal Herald is a fantastic, fun and powerful healing build that I have been maining ever since I got into healing in Guild Wars 2. It allows you to switch on and off various Herald facets, which are essentially boon buttons that you can activate to start pulsing whatever boons you need. We recently just had a beta event where we got to test out every profession's new weapons that are coming soon, and I had a good play around with Revenant's new weapon, the Scepter, mostly with Heal Herald, to see how it would change this build, which is a long-time favourite of mine. Before Scepter and some recent buffs to Shield, which give it more healing in Aegis, with the Heal Herald you had very little reason to swap off of Staff. The passive healing that you get from your enhanced regeneration and Staff auto attacks, which heal as well, paired with excellent protection uptime, was actually enough to keep everyone alive for the most part, for most experienced groups, and it made this build pretty passive and easy. And while that's not necessarily a bad thing, the new Scepter definitely adds a whole new dimension to this build and allows it to be much more hands-on and reactive if you desire that playstyle. It took me a second to learn how to incorporate the new weapon into my rotation and energy management, but before long I felt the click and I was having a blast with this new Heal Herald playstyle. It was really cool. The main new mechanic of Scepter is Skill 3, which is an upkeep skill, which tethers you to either an enemy or an ally. And after building up stacks of what's called Otherworldly Charge by auto-attacking 6 times, you can then consume it for an additional stronger effect. If you are tethered to an enemy, it applies offensive conditions to them and pulls them to you. And if you are tethered to an ally, it applies defensive boons to allies around you and teleports you to that tethered target. This basically means you can choose to either tether to an enemy or ally depending on if you need some extra support or some extra offense. Or you could use it for that pull or teleport effect, which is useful in some niche scenarios. For example, you could unstack from your group to go and perform a mechanic and then immediately teleport back to the group when you're done, or you could use it to pull ads on Slothazor, although there's certainly better pulls for this on other classes. It is a bit niche. This tether is a big part of the power of Scepter, so you definitely should be using it, and it's an upkeep skill that constantly drains your energy, or rev juice as I like to call it, when it's in use, and it's not cheap either. It's 3 points of upkeep. On Heal Herald, you should be used to keeping at least 6 points of upkeep almost at all times, because that's where your quickness comes from. And you certainly can't just add an extra 3 points of upkeep on top of that 6 points. 9 points of upkeep is simply not sustainable, so this is where you have to get a bit creative with your energy management. It was a bit annoying at first to try and incorporate this new upkeep skill, but after a bit of practice I sort of realized its potential. You basically have to decide which Herald facets you want to have up in addition to the tether, depending on the encounter, your group, and how your group is doing. The one facet I would say I always want up regardless is the facet of Light, the healing skill. Not only to keep your juiced up Herald regeneration on everyone at all times for the constant passive healing, but also because the consume effect on this skill can come in so clutch at times to just flat out ignore certain death to keep you alive when you would have otherwise died. And since you're the healer, it basically saves the whole squad's life too. If you don't have the facet already on, it would require an extra button press and cast time before you can access this monster of a healing skill, by which time you may already be dead. And on top of that, if you are stunned, you actually can't activate the facet if it wasn't already activated before you got stunned. But it can be consumed while stunned if it was already active before you got stunned. Kinda interesting how that works. Usually I would also say the protection facet, the elite skill, would be another one that I'd like to have up most of the time, but honestly it's It's so expensive to have active that I surprisingly didn't have it up as much as usual when testing Scepter. The Scepter spits out so much barrier that it sort of replaces protection in a way. You know, it allows you to take more damage before healing is required. Plus, now that you'll be using shield more often, you do have a bit of protection on that as well, although not as much. So I'm usually pulsing the offensive facets for Might and Fury with regen, and if I notice that the group is struggling to stay alive, or if I know some pressure is coming up soon, I might consider giving up one or both of the offensive facets, Might and Fury, to start pulsing protection instead. And that is, in a nutshell, how Scepter makes Heal Herald more reactive and fun. You have to assess the situation you're in and decide which facets you want to have up at any given time, because you can't just have all of the important ones up all the time. That, on top of the fact that you can choose to tether to either an enemy or an ally, depending on whether you need more offense or defense, makes the gameplay feel really fresh and new and really raises the skill ceiling for this build. One of the best parts about all this as well is the new, more active and hands-on build did not come at the cost of the old, more passive and relaxed build, where you just sort of camp staff and auto attack. In fact, you should still have the staff as your secondary weapon with this new Scepter build, so you don't even need to change anything to swap between these two playstyles. So I can use the Scepter and play the new active and strong build when I need to or want to, but then when I want to take it easy or just can't be fucked, I can just swap to staff and auto attack and keep all the important facets activated. And that's, again, usually pretty much enough to keep most capable groups alive and your quickness capped out. Before we go, I'll also mention a few things that I'd like to see changed before the Scepter is officially released in the next quarterly update in early 2024. While it's certainly interesting and novel to me now being able to change the consume effect of the tether by selecting either an ally or an enemy, I will admit it is a little bit clunky and weird to select a specific target in the middle of fast-paced gameplay, especially in instance content where the whole squad is usually stacked on the boss. I can only imagine how hard it must be to like select the commander in the middle of a big Zerg in like World v World or something like that. Also, the sound effects are a little bit weird and clunky as well. I kind of wish they were a little bit more sleek and satisfying. And I think the weapon skill tooltips need to be redone. The skill 3 one is super long. It's the longest skill tooltip I've ever seen in this game. And I've actually seen some people that have smaller screens complain that it doesn't even fit on their screen on the forums. And the skill 2 one is quite vague and doesn't really explain exactly how the auto attacks enhance that skill. I think that could be a little bit less vague. And mostly, I think the skill 3 uses too much energy. The tether, 3 points of upkeep is quite a lot, especially for Herald and in competitive modes where Revenant feels generally quite energy starved and limited in how reactive it can be because of its limited energy. I know I just went on about how this extra energy usage makes Heal Herald's playstyle more active and fun, but I think that sentiment would remain if they did decrease the upkeep to 2 points instead of 3, for example. But overall, I'm super happy about the Revenant Scepter, and I trust a lot of these issues will be ironed out prior to the weapon's official debut in the next major update. I love the general concept of it too. I mean, a scepter being like a handle and conduit for an energy blade saber thing. I didn't see that coming, and props to ArenaNet for their endless creativity. And that's it. Let me know what you reckon about the new weapon, and check out the Twitch as well. Alright, get out of here.